Every action has consequences. Every story influences the world. Maybe Jake Adelstein had to learn this lesson the hard way, that the news is not just a story for the newspaper. In fact, it is an instrument of war that can change the lives of many individuals, and in the world of the Yakuza, it can take some too. And thus, he needs to be more conscious about what he reveals through his words. In Tokyo Vice episodes 6 and 7, Adelstein makes some really impulsive decisions to get a good story, which in turn not only jeopardizes his career to some extent, but also damages his relationship with the police department, especially with his father figure, Hiroto Katajiri. Tokyo Vice episodes 6 and 7 majorly revolve around a tip about a drug shipment arriving in Tokyo that belongs to Shinzo Tozawa. Through this information, Katajiri finds out about a mole in the police department who is working for Tozawa. The other parts of the story follow Sato, who gets more romantically involved with Samantha, and, in love and anger, takes a man's life for her. He also tries to help Samantha find her best friend, Polina, who disappeared without a trace, and no one has any idea where she is. Let's dig deeper. Jake Adelstein arrives at Samantha's apartment to apologize for his rude behavior the previous night. In the last episode, a man named Mr. Sujita, involved in an insurance scam with Tozawa, committed suicide after Adelstein tried to investigate him. He blamed himself for Sujita's death and, in a bitter state of mind, misbehaved with Samantha in the nightclub. While apologizing, Adelstein also tries to warn Samantha about a romance with Chiharakai gang Yakuza Sato, but she refuses to listen to him and asks Adelstein to leave immediately. Meanwhile, Sato thrashes an airport mechanic, Tsutomu Makita, who works for Tozawa, and thus threatens him to snitch upon his master and reveal information about his upcoming drug shipment. As soon as Sato obtains the information, he informs his Oyabun Hitachi Ishida, who is planning a counterattack on Tozawa after he attempted to kill Ishida at the end of Tokyo Vice episode 5. Adelstein, on the other hand, digs more about Tozawa and comes across some Yakuza fan magazines that are written by Tozawa's publicist, Yukai Haruki. Without wasting any moment, Adelstein pays a visit to Haruki and acts like his dedicated follower, and also wins his trust by asking for his autograph. Flattered by Adelstein's words, he lets him inside his small apartment, which is decorated and stuffed with Tozawa's pictures. Though Haruki doesn't share any useful information, Adelstein finds out how Tozawa was slowly plaguing the entire city with his meth drug called shabu. Also, Yukai points out the fact that Tozawa silenced one of his mistresses who talked to a reporter, and this particular information hints at Adelstein's keen interest in Tozawa's current mistress, Misaki. Meanwhile, the heads of the Yakuza family call in for an urgent meeting with Chairman Nakahara, who is the head of the West Turf, Kansai. They have already informed him about Tozawa's attack on Hitachi Ishida and how he tried to disrupt peace in the city. Soon, Tozawa joins the meeting and offers 100 million yen to Ishida's restitution for his offense. However, Ishida only takes half the money and subtly demands that Tozawa gets on his knees to beg for forgiveness for his mistakes. Nakahara compels Tozawa to do so, and as the man bows his head in front of his archenemy, every part of his body burns with rage, yearning for revenge as soon as possible. Later that night, Matsuo visits Samantha at the Onyx once again, asking for 12 sessions of the physical favor that he wants from her. He even reveals to her that he has been hired by her own dominating father, who believes that Samantha has disgraced the dedicated Christian family by stealing from the mission fund. Without any other option at her disposal and to protect her dreams of opening a nightclub in Tokyo, Samantha agrees to Matsuo's deal and promises to meet him the next evening. After the Yakuza meeting, Tozawa reveals his discomfort to Chairman Nakahara and tells him how his ego and pride got hurt when the chairman made him grovel at Ishida's feet. At this point, Nakahara finally reveals that it was his plan to bring Tozawa to Tokyo to plant their flag in the city. Tozawa had botched Ishida's assassination once, and there wouldn't be a second time when he would be forgiven for his mistake. Meanwhile, Ishida and his close associates, Sato and Aniki Kobayashi, discuss whether they should seize Tozawa's upcoming drug shipment or not, with the intention to damage his empire. Ishida is advised by Aniki not to disrupt peace and start a war with Tozawa, and thus Ishida coins a subtle way to attack his enemy. Through Sato, he brings in Adelstein again and informs him about the arriving shipment at the airport. At this point, Adelstein gets greedy and decides to share the information with Hiroto Katagiri. However, Katagiri asks Adelstein to be patient and not to rush things, as it could jeopardize the whole operation. Yet, Adelstein acts on his impulses and shares the tip with another corrupt and greedy detective, Jin Miyamoto, who acts on the tip but finds nothing during the bust. Miyamoto blames Adelstein for the false information and points out that he will make sure that no other cop will trust Adelstein again, thereby putting his career at stake. When Katagiri arrives at the airport, he points out again that due to his impulsive decision and greed for a story, Adelstein has burned all the bridges, and now they will have to start from ground zero, because, probably after this bust, Tozawa is going to change all the routes and double his protection. Soon after that, Katagiri stops replying to Adelstein's messages and stops responding to his calls. Samantha informs Sato about her father and Matsuo demanding physical favors from her, and thus, the very next day, Sato pays a visit to Matsuo and tries to threaten him to leave Samantha alone. However, a subtle discussion between the two men takes a violent turn when Matsuo comments about Samantha, and Sato loses his temper and kills Matsuo on the spot by crushing his skull. Matsuo was the second person that Sato has killed so far, the first being the assassin who attacked Hitachi Ishida in Tokyo Vice Episode 5. Ishida had earlier told Sato that the first kill often torments the soul, but as the number of kills will increase, he would be less bothered about the blood on his hands, and probably with the second kill, Sato would turn out to become the person he most despised, a bloodthirsty Yakuza. At the end of Tokyo Vice Episode 6, it is finally revealed that Miyamoto has been working for Tozawa and has been protecting him from the police for a very long time. When Jake handed the tip about the shipment to Miyamoto, he quickly asked the airport engineers to hide the consignment in other parts of the aircraft, where the police would not search. Katagiri already knew about a mole in the police department, and thus asked Adelstein to be patient, but he didn't listen. As the episode begins, Katagiri recovers Tsutomu Makita's dead body from the harbor, implying that Tozawa killed the person responsible for betraying him after learning about the tip and the snitch. By now, Katagiri is certain that there is someone on the inside of the police department who is leaking crucial information to Tozawa, and so, to catch the rat, Katagiri sets a trap. Katagiri is suspicious of Miyamoto and his corrupt practices, and thus requests his superior to put Miyamoto in the organized crime division, where he is informed about some crucial evidence that will be sufficient to arrest Tozawa. However, neither Katagiri nor his senior reveal any further information about the nature of the evidence, and thus, out of curiosity, Miyamoto asks everyone around him about Tozawa and the new evidence. Samantha, on the other hand, is trying to locate her best friend, Polina, who has disappeared without a trace. She discusses the issue with her lover, Sato, but at that moment, Sato is struggling with his own demons, as he killed another man in his life to protect his love. It is not clear to Sato whether Samantha actually loves him or she is just using him to fulfill her own ambitions. The hidden romance with Samantha comes in between Sato's professional life as a Yakuza, and he tries to maintain his distance from her after that. Another part of Sato's past opens up as he finds out from his younger brother that his father has been admitted to the hospital. However, when he arrives there to see him, Sato's mother pushes him away and asks him to leave, refusing to take any of his blood money for his father's treatment. In Tokyo Vice Episode 6, Adelstein tries to strike up a conversation with Tozawa's mistress, Miss Aki, but due to Tozawa's bodyguards always roaming around her like shadows, Adelstein fails to get any insightful information from her. Later, in Tokyo Vice Episode 7, Adelstein meets Miss Aki in a nightclub while he is out with a friend, Dave Fish, from his hometown, Missouri. At this moment, there is no bodyguard protecting Miss Aki, as all of Tozawa's men are busy at a ceremony where all the VIPs of the city have gathered to celebrate Tozawa's 52nd birthday. Miyamoto arrives at the party too, and informs Tozawa about the evidence that Katagiri has got his hands on that may lead to his arrest. Tozawa threatens Miyamoto to get a copy of these documents so that they can prepare for an impending danger. As Miyamoto leaves the party, Tozawa suffers an attack and crashes down. Tozawa has been suffering from an incurable ailment since the beginning of the series, which has something to do with his internal organs, probably his liver, and is therefore in urgent need of a transplant. Before losing consciousness, Tozawa requests his most loyal men to bring in Miss Aki, and without wasting any moment, Tozawa's men arrive at the nightclub where Adelstein is trying to dig information from her. Adelstein evades a close clash with Tozawa's men, but the way they take away Miss Aki, Adelstein gets certain that there is something fishy going on inside. Meanwhile, Miyamoto arrives at the police station late at night and breaks the lock to the room in the basement where Katajiri had locked up all the crucial evidence against Tozawa. However, when Miyamoto opens the evidence box, he finds nothing, and to his surprise, there is a hidden camera above the doorway that has captured him while he tried to tamper with the evidence. On the other side of the screen, Katajiri smirks at the guilty Miyamoto, whom he has caught red-handed, and the episode ends without revealing Miyamoto's fate. In the end, things are not looking very bright for the drug lord Tozawa as one tragedy after another strikes him down, the most lethal one being his deteriorating. Who was Kaori Shoda? What did Emi Maruyama find out about her? In Tokyo Vice episodes 4 and 5, Subcap Emi Maruyama was investigating a case where a young girl was brutally murdered. According to her investigation, the killer arrested by the police had unreliable testimony, and she believed that the police were just trying to close the case. Maruyama had been following the pattern of these suspicious murders happening in the city, and in Tokyo Vice episode 7, another murder case comes forward. On November 13, police recovered the dead body of a 24-year-old girl named Kaori Shoda from Jiyugaoka. At a press conference, the police chief informed the reporters that Detective Miyamoto had found some evidence in a room that belonged to Kaori's ex-boyfriend, Sachihiro Joe, and quickly arrested him and charged him with her murder. However, Maruyama wasn't satisfied with the police report and thus decided to interview the corrupt Miyamoto, only to find out that he knew nothing about the case and made a hasty arrest to shut it down so that he could gain back his honor after a failed drug bust. Maruyama reveals to Miyamoto that Kaori filed a complaint against her ex-boyfriend a long time ago, but the police didn't bother to make an arrest, and they could have possibly avoided a murder if they hadn't neglected the warnings. Hence, the entire police department is liable for her death, which she even covered in her report, but no one paid any heed to it, and the story was printed on the second last page, where probably no one would ever notice it. When Adelstein discussed with Maruyama how they buried her story, she told him that no matter how many times they tried to neglect the facts or bury them, the truth would always find its way, and then no one would be able to ignore it, and things would probably change for the better. Though it wasn't revealed until the end of Tokyo Vice episode 7, Kaori's murder case could also be linked to the unusual serial killings happening in Tokyo, and it was just a matter of time when Maruyama would finally get a lead and be able to connect the dots. What happened to Polina? Polina was a failed model who worked with Samantha at the Onyx Club. She had a Japanese boyfriend named Akira, who preyed upon Polina's hard-earned money and demanded expensive gifts from her, because of which Polina was never able to save any income. In Tokyo Vice episode 6, Akira took Polina to a nightclub to celebrate their 3-month anniversary, where a naive Polina ordered expensive drinks for her boyfriend and his friends, and they all drank away the night. In Tokyo Vice episode 7, the screen depicted Polina entering into a limousine, and she had been missing from the scene since then. Samantha tried to locate her friend, but couldn't find any trace of her, and thus sought help from her Yakuza lover, Sato. When Sato threatened Akira, he finally revealed that Polina was in huge debt to the bar, and so the manager took care of her. Sato entered the night bar where Polina was last seen and found out that the manager had sent her to Yoshino to make her pay off what she owed to them. When Samantha tried to inquire about what was going on in Yoshino, Sato didn't share any other information and just walked off from there, as due to Samantha, he was under the radar, and if he continued helping her, each and every Yakuza in town would know about his affair with Samantha, which he wanted to keep hidden for professional reasons. After Sato refused to help Samantha, she looked for the next man on her list who could possibly help her to rescue Polina, and thus she arrived at Adelstein's door's top. Judging from the kind of mystery and drama that the narrative has created around Yoshino, it seems like there is some high-class brothel situated in the mountainous region of Yoshino. As Akira told Sato that he was just the talent and the manager handled the rest, it could be surmised that Akira charmed girls into this trap, where the manager would bury them in debt, and then forcefully send them to Yoshino to recover the debts. Sato found some Tozawa men inside this bar, and perhaps the Yoshino network is yet another dirty business run by Tozawa. In the following episodes, Adelstein will further investigate the mystery circling around Yoshino and will unravel the illegal trade that is happening in the district.